Okay, today we're going to talk about creating a 3D ball, both in Affinity Designer and as Xara Designer Pro. And we're going to talk about kind of the similarities and differences. So here I've already created one in Affinity Designer, and as you can see, this is just three different ellipses. Uh, and that's pretty easy to do. So let's go ahead and show you how I did this real quick. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click and drag with the ellipse tool, right? And create my circle. That creates a perfect circle and not an ellipse, right? So holding down the Shift key again makes it a perfect circle. I just make it whatever size I want and let go. Okay, and I can turn this whatever color I want, right? Let's go ahead and give it a different color so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so that's the first thing I've done is I've given, well, you know what? Let me go to a different color. Okay, so the first one is a green circle. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to basically copy that circle and it's going to create a copy directly over the top of that. And I can do that by going, sorry, to layer. And, well, I thought it was there. It's here in edit. Edit duplicate selection, which is Control J, Control K in Xara, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to do that. And if you look over here in this layers gallery, you're going to see a second green circle appear once I do this. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that selection. There you go. And that's done. I usually just use the keyboard shortcut, which is why I've had to hunt for that. And this particular circle, now I've got two, as you can see, two green ones, and they're one right over the top. And just to prove to you that that's exactly what it is, I'm going to drag the one away from it. And I'm going to hit Control Z to undo. Um, so it's directly over the top of the next one, and I'm taking the top one and I'm going to apply a dark purple color to it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a transparency to it. I'm going to apply an elliptical transparency to it. So I clicked on the transparency tool, went up to the top where it says type, right? And it was a none, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to elliptical. And I'm going to move this center portion up into the edge in the upper left-hand corner and pick on one of these handles and drag it down. I don't want to quite go all the way to the end. I want to leave both of these inside of it. And this is actually the opposite of the way I want it to. So here it's not transparent and here it is. And I'm just going to reverse that. So I'm going to go up and click on this reverse gradient thing, which is very handy, right? And there I've got my transparency where here it's not transparent and in the center it is, which is exactly what I want. Now that I've applied this transparency, I'm going to go ahead and tell it what type of transparency I want it to have. And I'm going to scroll down here until I get to luminosity. And I'm going to click on that, and that makes it a luminosity, a transparency, which basically is affecting how light is affecting the shape underneath. Okay, so because it was transparent up here in the top hand corner, the light is getting through, and here at the bottom it wasn't getting through. And as you can see, that makes it look like it's a three-dimensional shape where the light's striking the top, and at the bottom it's in shadow. All right, pretty cool, right? The only other thing we need to do is we need to provide a shadow underneath it to give it a very even more of a 3D feel. So I'm going to click my ellipse tool again. This time I'm not holding the shift key down. And I'm going to just create an ellipse like this about, you just kind of eyeball it. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a black fill. I'm going to go ahead and move it to back right now. And I'm going to go ahead and give it another elliptical transparency. So doing the same thing before, hit the transparency tool, pick the type, elliptical. And this time it's the way I want it to be, but I'm still going to move where the non-transparent portion is, the center of it. And I'm going to grab one of these handles and I'm going to kind of drag that out to the end of this ellipse. Okay. And that's pretty much how I want that. And I'm going to move this kind of where the dark portion is right underneath that ball. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give this an effect. And I'm going to choose this Gaussian blur effect, and I'm going to go ahead and blur that up. And I'm just going to eyeball that to what I think it should be. I've chosen 18 pixels, but you can do whatever you want. And then the last thing I'm going to do is tilt it a little bit and then kind of reposition it. And there we go. Now I have my floor shadow for my three-dimensional ball. And this is kind of a neat way of doing it. I can group all this, of course, right? But one of the things that you can do is, now that I've done that, I can change the color of my my base ellipse to anything I want, and it's going to change the look of this 3D ball. So if I change it to orange, for example, I get an orange-looking ball. If I change it this pink, right, I get a pink-looking ball. Here, purple, red, yellow, blue. I can even change it to white, and I get a metallic silver looking ball, right? So that's kind of a neat way of doing things, and that's the way you do it in Affinity Designer Pro, or Affinity Designer, sorry, not a Pro. Now I'm going to switch over to Xara and show you the same thing. So here I've got a similar ball already created, and I'm going to basically follow the same steps. So I'm going to go ahead and hold down the Control key this time to constrain this to a perfect circle. And I'm going to go ahead and give this a color. We'll go ahead and give it a different color here. Let's go with this green again. And then I'm going to hit Control K to clone that ball, right? So I've got another ellipse over the top of it. You can see it here in the layer gallery. I'm going to give this one, again, the dark purple color. I'm going to go ahead and give it a circular transparency, because here we have an elliptical but also a circular one. Circular just means it stays at a perfect circle. I'm going to go ahead and move these around. In Xara Designer Pro, you don't have the ability to just reverse it, the transparency like you did at the click of a button. But what I can do is just tell it, give each individual node its own transparency, which is also very nice, right? Okay, there we go. And again, I want to, right now it's at mix, but I want to give this the same thing, a luminosity transparency. And once I do that, I get that same three-dimensional feel to the object underneath it. Okay, and then I could do the exact same thing with a single ellipse for the shadow under this ball, but in Xara you have the ability to do something a little bit nicer as far as shadows go. So I'm gonna, first of all, you could do, if I wanted to do this, I could give it a shadow like this, and I can tell it I want a floor shadow, right? Which has its limitations and is not as nice as what you can do if you start from scratch. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and create a shape, right? Another ellipse. I'm going to go ahead and give this a black color, and I'm going to give this a transparency. You know, let me make another one first. I'm going to clone this shape, Control K, and I'm going to move that one up, and I'm going to reduce this in size. So I'm going to make a much smaller version of this. All right, so now I've got two shapes. The first one, I'm going to go ahead and give a transparency, a flat transparency of 97%. Okay, you can barely see it there, but it's still there. The other one, I'm going to move over the top of it, kind of not centered, but off to the side, and I'm going to give that one a flat transparency of 95%. So 97 to 95, and then I'm going to use this, which is a blend tool, and I'm going to blend between the two, right? And right now there are 5 steps between the two. I'm going to increase that to about 35 steps, right? And what I've done is I've taken this transparency tool and I've got a blend of many, many, many circles in between the two, where I have a dark section here and a lighter section out to the side. And I can move this and go ahead and put it to back and maneuver that exactly where I want to. Under it, I can give it a little bit of a feather, right? So I blur the outer edge of it, right? And I can do however much I want of that. And I can also rotate that around a little bit and move it exactly where I want. And there you go. You've got the same type of floor shadow that we had before, but it's a little bit nicer. And you have a little bit more control over where the shadow goes. If I wanted to do the same thing as before that I showed you in Affinity, I could, right? I could go ahead and just give it an elliptical transparency this time and move it to one edge and kind of move it around. Have to, there you go, and then still give it that feather. I could do it that same way. So it depends. You have a little bit more control over what you're doing here and where that middle is going to be, and how it affects the outer rims of it and stuff like that. It's nitpicky, but that's the way you do it. And anyway, I hope you learned something and found this tutorial useful. And we'll see you again back next time.